everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Go Local News editor Kate Nagel. I am excited to welcome Maria Karagianis, former Boston Globe reporter, here into the studio with us. She'll be giving a talk this evening at the Providence Committee on Foreign Relations. So much to talk about, and one of the things that was really interested to have you here in studios about is your time in Greece. And particularly the island of Lesbos, where so many Syrian refugees came over to. I'm assuming this is the crux of the conversation this evening.
Yes.
How did you get there? How long? Tell us about your experience, because I mean, your background and your passion clearly played such a role.
Yeah. Well, it is a long story, but a very interesting one, if I do say so, and rather accidental. I started my career very luckily as a girl reporter when not many girls were reporters at the Boston Globe, and I was lucky. I covered busing. Was very violent in the city of Boston. I went to South Africa during apartheid, covered a war in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, which is in the news again today.
And you gloss over, you were the Pulitzer Prize winning team at the Globe for the busing reporting.
Yes, we did, and we were lucky because, to be honest with you, really, literally, in those days, girls weren't reporters, and so it was a really thrilling thing. This Lesbos is a Greek island. I am a Greek speaker, so I do speak fluent Greek. I'm second generation. And Lesbos is an island, Greek island, that's probably the most eastern part of Europe. It's maybe a mile from Turkey.
Wow.
And, you see Turkey shimmering across the Aegean or the Mediterranean. And this is a bizarre story, but
sounds great.
It was at my daughter's wedding. My daughter is an executive at Facebook, and the wedding was sort of a lovely wedding in Silicon Valley. And I believe it was in August of 2015 where a woman that I hadn't seen for a long time, but had actually been my daughter's landlady in San Francisco, came up to me at the wedding and said, "Maria, you're a journalist, you speak Greek, there's a great catastrophe going on in Lesbos, and you must go." And I'm thinking, you know what, it's my daughter's wedding.
Can you give me a little bit to think about it, please?
Right.
But did you have, having had that, did a little spark get put in your head at that time?
It did,
yeah.
It did. And so that was the year that millions, literally, of people were coming across the sea. Human traffickers were bringing people from Turkey, refugees from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Iran, Iraq, mainly Syria, and traffickers were bringing them across the sea to Europe. And Lesbos was the first point of landing before they would go west to Germany or wherever else they were going to go. And in the next several months, the pictures were just overwhelming. And I think you remember there were pictures of literally taking dead babies out of the water, and life rafts that were overflowing with traumatized people, and just a flood of refugees. So after the wedding, I kept looking at those pictures, and one day I was walking along the sea, and I was thinking, what would I do if right now I saw a boat with 1,500 refugees spilling onto this beautiful beach? And somehow that thought sparked something in me, and I pulled my phone out, and I called my source in California. I was in Florida at the time, and I called my source in San Francisco and said, "Judy, I'm going to be in I'm going to be in Greece for Greek Easter, May of 2017. It was May of 2016. And you call your sources, and if they'll put me up, I will go to Lesbos." And so I did. And she called me right back. She said, "They'll put you up, and in fact, I'm coming too." So my new best friend, we went to Lesbos. And when I got there, I could have applied for a press pass. But sometimes I know enough to know that sometimes when you apply for a press pass, the government shows you sort of what they want you to see. And I felt I'm not really going there as a journalist. I'm going there more as a witness, as just a human, and I want to see what's what. And the second day I was there, it was really bizarre. I met an evangelical Christian nurse in a cafe. And I told her who I was, and she told me, yes, I'm working inside one of the camps that's in lockdown now, because they were made basically into prisons. And I said to her, could you help me go in? I said, I'm a journalist, but I'm really here as a witness. And she and some of her colleagues snuck me into the camp.
So you got to go. I'm assuming we're not many foreigners and journalists get access to it.
No, they don't. And it was really an astonishing experience that has really driven my work now. And I intend to go back. And I've been asked, and I really haven't sought this out, to be honest with you. I've probably been asked to give my talk that I'm going to give in Providence tonight around the country probably 24 times. Every place from the Harvard Club of Boston to a Catholic college in Cincinnati to Donald Trump's church in Palm Beach.
Quite the circuit, because people really want to know. I mean, as you said, you see the pictures, the horrible pictures of folks coming, but then once the reality is the ones that do land and they do end up in the camps, you had firsthand access to that. I mean, I know not every situation is the same, but what was the feeling in the camps?
Oh, it was overwhelming. I mean, the thing was, I think, and I may have my numbers slightly wrong, but in 2015 until March of 2016, probably 1 million refugees flooded onto the shores of Europe. And then it all sort of, the press went away. The election happened, and the EU made a deal with Turkey to put the refugees almost in lockdown, like imprison them, and then hold them to send them back to Turkey. But in the meantime, Turkey had an attempted coup. I mean, it's crazy. But basically, a lot of these people, thousands and even millions, I don't know the exact numbers, are in limbo. They're in refugee camps, locked down, locked in. The press has moved on. The EU has a lot of issues. Turkey has a lot of issues. And it's sort of like everybody's moved on except for the people in the camps. And when I got home, I had been on the board at the Harvard Club of Boston, and I just bumped into the president. And when he said, where have you been? And I told him, and he said, you have to give this talk. So I was lucky to be able to get photographs, because I couldn't act like a reporter inside the camp. But I have a lot of very interesting photographs about what it looked like inside. And, it's sort of hard to explain. It's heartbreaking in a lot of ways, because you feel, you feel for these people. There were all kinds of people speaking all sorts of languages, people from Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, the helpers, who were from all over the world, little children, and, life goes on, I mean, in its way, but we have no idea. And I think, for me, one of the takeaways for me is, I try not to be too much of a complainer. I hope my husband isn't watching this. But, you really say to yourself, oh my God, how lucky we are. You turn on a faucet, water comes out. We have food. We have no idea what, the scope of this to me is, it's probably the largest humanitarian catastrophe since World War II. And the hard part for me is nobody's writing about it, nobody's talking about it much. And, my sense is that I want to go back and write more.
Write more. How long were you there for in total?
I was there for a week.
And you saw it all.
Yeah.
Getting waves from outside here.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I had seen in the lead up for your talk tonight with the PCFR, the people of Lesbos taking in these mammoth numbers of refugees, both the impact itself on the island, I mean, Greece, struggling already to begin with economically, and then to be faced with this. The people there facing also a Nobel, excuse me, for their efforts kind of opening their arms. I mean, what did you see there? Because we saw here, and especially, you know, throughout the country, this sort of who's going to take the Syrian refugees and who's not. And so, you know, America felt that step removed, but that wasn't, there was no step removed. They were the front line. So talk a little bit about the Greek people's reaction to having them come and being faced with this and how they adapted, and, you know, is this, you know, again, a real humanitarian effort on their part?
Right. That's a really good question. And I think it's really was my biggest takeaway, because I do speak Greek and people were just pouring their hearts out to me. And it was very hard. The Greek people would say to me in Greek, "Δεν θέλουμε the Nobel Peace Prize." They didn't want the Nobel Peace Prize. They wanted tourism to come back. And what had happened was, when these photographs started to go all around the world, especially the charter flights from Europe, because apparently a lot of Europeans are the main tourist industry in Lesbos, were canceled. And so 90% of their economy is based on tourism. And when I was there last year, there was nobody there. I mean, I stayed in this hotel of these people. There was nobody there except for me. And that was the heartbreaking thing. After all they had done, after all they had given, they didn't have the tourism anymore, and really they were struggling mightily. They told me heartbreaking stories of little yayas, little old ladies going down to the sea every day with cups of tea and little sweets. And, you know, every day between 2015 and 2016, on this island alone, this is one island, about 1,500 people were washing up on the shore every single day. And, you know, farmers would go out with tractors to pull in boats. Apparently, before I got there, there were just piles. The traffickers would give many of the people fake life jackets. So there were sort of mountains of fake life jackets. By the time I had gotten there, everything had been cleaned up. All, you know, because of the government, the refugees were basically in prison. And the island is beautiful. And when I give talks and people say, "What can we do?" it sounds sort of lame, but I say, go to Lesbos.
Support the economy.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful island. And the irony, I'll just say one more thing. My own interest, I think, comes from the fact that my maternal relatives were Greek Christians born in Turkey. And there was also a similar flood of refugees where Christians, there was a genocide early in the century of the 20th century, Armenian genocide, and also many Greek Christians. And there was a flood of refugees. And the irony is many of the people on Lesbos are themselves descended from refugees.
So, wow. I mean, again, this unbelievable story you're going to share, and you're looking to go back.
Yeah.
Why do you want to go back?
Good question. Because there's something about this that has captured my heart. And I realize that regular people, I mean, I haven't tried to give this talk. I am a Woodrow Wilson Fellow and I get asked to give talks, but I haven't tried to give this talk. You know what I mean? I haven't tried. And I realize that people still are interested. So someone will hear me and then they'll call me and say, "Will you come to my group?" And I realize that regular people, you know, do care. And if we wait for government to help us, if we wait for, you know, whoever's going to do it, they're not going to do it. And so there's a part of me that feels maybe some small tiny thing I can do is raise some awareness. And
well, I'm glad we could have you in here as you're going over to talk with the PCFR shortly. Certainly going to have you back in because you've got so many things going on as the founder of Discovering Justice, which I'll get you on next time because there's just so, I wish I could talk 2 hours with you here, and you know, especially as you mentioned, being one of those first girl reporters.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
That's a whole other story. We're going to go have coffee sometime. But Maria, I appreciate you taking the time to come in today. Wish you a good talk this evening.
Thank
and
you.
Hopefully we'll have you back in the studio, whether for Discovering Justice or your next trip over to Greece.
Okay.
Okay, Maria, thanks so much. I'll let you around the corner. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you can go around the corner.
Oh, yeah,
Go right
okay, thanks.
Okay, Maria Karagianis, the former Boston Globe reporter, was part of the team that won the Pulitzer at the Globe for their reporting on busing issues. Talked about her time going over to Greece to see the refugee crisis firsthand. She's giving a talk this evening at the Providence Committee on Foreign Relations. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our final and regular guest here in the Navigate Credit Union broadcast.